Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Diona Doherty, and this is the V Revolution podcast brought to you by women's intimate health brand, Balance Active. Today we're going to be decoding some of the weird, wacky and wonderful things about the female body.
And hi, I'm Dr. Priya Gopaldis, and today we're deep diving into those intimate sexual health conversations because let's be real, ladies, we're all in this together. If anything we say concerns you, please don't hesitate to speak to your local GP.
Yeah, grab a cuppa and let's revolutionise how we talk about women's intimate health. From old wives' tales to societal taboos, there's so many myths surrounding sexual health. We've all heard loads of them, we've laughed at them, we've cried at them. And today we're joined by a brilliant guest. She is Miss World International Woman 2023. It is the beautiful, the wonderful, the remarkable Emma J. Webber.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No, first of all, I want to talk about your t-shirt. It says Women Empower Women. Feels like that's your whole thing.
Definitely. All about girl power.
Yeah. I mean, aren't we all? Which Spice Girl would you be, first of all? If you just brought up girl power, who would you be?
A bit of all of them, I think. But
that is the best answer.
Yeah.
You can't be all of them, Emma. You have to choose. I was Baby Spice growing up, right? Let me tell you about this. I was Baby Spice growing up. But do you know the way she always wore the striped, sports dress and the big chunky trainers, but my mum and dad couldn't afford to buy me the actual sports dress, so my mum had stitched on the wee stripes up the side on this little cheap dress, and I never felt more brilliant in my life, and I used to make everyone pay to watch me sing in my backyard. But anyway, enough about me. Tell us a bit about you're a pageant girl.
Yes.
Through and through. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I've been in pageantry about 6-7 years now. I literally fell into it. My background is not heels, it's more football boots, trainers, sports, football, rugby.
That's a jump, isn't it, then?
A massive jump. But in 2016, I was going through quite a difficult period in my life, and I was looking for something to build my self-esteem. So I literally was just Googling how to improve your self-esteem, your confidence, and I came across an ad for a pageant, and well, the rest is history, as they say.
And there's obviously a sea of information out there and options for self-help and what you can do to if you're finding yourself in a low place and you do need to help your self-esteem. Yeah. So what was it about going into pageants that you went, well, actually that's the route for me?
Well, I seen an ad for Miss British Beauty Curve, and the girls on stage they all had similar body shapes to me, and they were all wearing these amazing dresses. So the first thing was oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing just to feel that good about yourself and stand on stage feeling amazing. And then behind the scenes, what I didn't realise is that they do a lot of body confidence workshops and empowerment workshops, and you're joining a sisterhood. All year round you're doing different community projects, and you have your own platform, you raise money for charity, so there was a lot more to it than I anticipated.
And there is much more to it than I think people just see. I heard you speaking earlier about what that year before a big pageant that looks like, because what we see is those photographs of on stage of everyone looking absolutely gorgeous and glamorous in their dresses, and those maybe a couple of days of the swimsuit round and the different sort of skills that people do, but we don't see all that charity work that leads up to it and all of those campaigns that you're involved in. Tell me about the things that you were involved in leading up to then.
Yeah, so for example, in 2022, I was part of Miss Great Britain, which is the oldest and most prestigious pageant in the UK. Yeah. That particular year, collectively, the finalists, we raised over £50,000 for Cancer Research UK.
Right. I'm actually friends with the previous Miss Great Britain. She's from back home.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, and she still talks about it. It's she was maybe, oh God, I don't want to out her, but it was maybe 15 odd years ago. But she still loves the fact that she's part of this community.
Yeah, once you're in and you join the family, that's it.
You can't get out.
You can't escape it. But yeah, so when you first apply for a pageant and you get given, whether it's your regional sash, if you're representing your city, or if it's a national sash, you've then got 12 months or approximately 12 months of hard work before you even step foot on stage.
This sounds like a threat from Liam Neeson. He's you've got 12 months.
Yeah, you've got 12 months and that's
Make it work.
I mean, you are free to do whatever you wish to do in those 12 months.
Yes.
But a lot of the girls will have their own platforms. My platform most recently was LGBTQ plus rights and representation. Previously, my platform has been about body positivity, female empowerment, that kind of thing. So you can get involved in a project, make your own project or campaigns. There's been a lot of campaigns in pageantry around women's health and all sorts of things really. And
there's really just a mixture of things in it you can
massive,
be involved in.
Yeah, a huge mixture of things.
And it's great to have you here today because we're obviously talking about sexual health myths, and there are loads of them. Is there any? Like the one that sticks out in my mind that I remember always hearing growing up was you can get pregnant from a toilet seat. Was that just in my school? That's what I went in all girls school as well, so I don't know why we were saying that. But like that's what we always say. So people were like, you can get pregnant from a toilet seat, and that was one of those things. Priya, you're the expert. Not in getting pregnant on toilet seats, but as our resident doctor, is there any truth in that?
No. I don't think so. No, you cannot get pregnant from a toilet seat, but you can get pregnant at any time over your period.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So always use contraception is
if you don't want to get pregnant?
Yes.
But so the reason I think that people said that you can get pregnant from a toilet seat is because of how long a sperm can stay alive or active outside of the male, and how long do you know how long that is?
So sperm can stay alive within the female body for about 3 to 5 days, but if it's outside on a toilet seat, within 15 to 30 minutes it's going to die. It's gone. You don't need to worry about that.
Right, so no one's getting pregnant on a toilet seat today.
That's good to know.
That's good to know. Is there any myths, any sexual health myths that you've heard before? You're like, is that true? I don't know.
Well, when I was very younger, the myth was that you could get pregnant just from kissing.
Oh wow!
So I was kind of like, don't touch me, don't touch me. But I guess, I mean, within the LGBTQ plus community, there are many myths.
Right.
That, I mean, the most prevalent one, I would say, is that if you're a woman having kind of sexual relations with another woman, then you can't, well, one, you can't get pregnant, but two, you can't contract like an STI or anything like that. You're completely safe.
Which is not true. Or is it true? I don't know. It's not true. That can't be true. That can't be true, surely?
So contracting an STI from
same-sex sex if you're two females?
Yes, absolutely. You can contract an STI from same sex. You know, if you have intercourse, there are certain STIs like chlamydia, which is passed through bodily fluids, and herpes, which is skin-to-skin contact. So if you're having, you'll probably know more about this than I do, but when you're having female-to-female sex, you should also use protection. There is, I think, something called a dam, which is like a very thin bit of latex, or soft plastic, which you can use, and that stops. So
it's like a female condom?
Almost, exactly. Which a lot of people don't know about. A lot of doctors
I've
as well,
never heard
actually.
of that,
Have
you heard of this?
Yes. But what I do need to ask, I know this from personal experience, is...
I cannot wait to hear what you're about to ask.
I think we're going to say this. So there was... I say one time, it was plenty of times, where instead of using like a dental dam or anything like that, that you would just whip the cling film out of the kitchen cupboard.
I dare.
So are you wrapping up a sandwich or having sex?
No. So just whip it out, cut a bit off,
and just pop
it on, off you go. Like it. I'm guessing it didn't feel any different to what an actual official dam would do.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a layer of protection there, but was there?
So
she's like, do I need to
So I mean, the idea of having like a barrier is correct. However, a lot of like with dental dams and with condoms, they have a marking, so it's a CE or a BS a BSI kite marking to show that they've sort of
sanitary.
they're like sanitary or like up to a high standard enough to prevent these diseases. So I'm not sure cling film qualifies.
Your Tesco's own cling film.
Oh,
do you know what?
Sandwich there.
I love how creative that is, and I also love how that probably didn't even spoil the mood. It was like, I'm just going to go get some cling film here.
No, I know. But do you know what? One night, my mum came and babysat and stayed overnight so I could have the night off. And then I come home the next day and she was like, like, I found your cling film under your bed. Like, I put it back in the kitchen drawer for you. I was like, thanks, Mum. Must have been the kids messing about or something. I was just like...
But if you're a straight woman and you find cling film under someone's bed, you'd be like, she just enjoys some sandwiches, or like she's wrapping up Lego.
Exactly.
I don't know.
I've known one of my friends who's used cling film just to kind of suck it in, like on a night out.
God, on a night out.
Yeah, just to make yourself a bit
like a little corset.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you remember years ago during like whenever
silent judgment.
People used to put it on to sweat.
Yeah.
To like exercising and sweat.
Yes.
We used to put ourselves through before we wised up.
See, cling film
so
is multi-purpose.
Yeah. Oh my God, cling films. Here we're getting at an absolute steal. Everyone's stock up on their cling film right now. There's so much we can do with it.
But it doesn't work for sex.
Yeah, not recommended by doctors.
Okay.
Not GP recommended.
No.
Are there any sexual myths that you heard growing up? I mean, I don't think anyone's going to bake cling films, but like one that you'd have heard.
So I've heard that if two virgins have sex, then they cannot pass on STIs or they can't pass on any sort of diseases.
And can they? Because they can. Well, suppose if you can contract an STI through a non-sexual contact, then you can pass on.
Exactly. So you can get STIs through bodily fluid. So that's like chlamydia, gonorrhea. Then you can also get STIs from. They can be passed from mother to baby as well.
Oh yes.
Okay. You can also get STIs from skin to skin contact. So like herpes, and also oral sex. You can get STIs from too. So just because you're a virgin doesn't mean you haven't had oral sex.
Yeah. But also herpes, which I don't think I knew until I was nearly 30. Like a cold sore is herpes on your mouth, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
That just sounds like people. If you say that, people are like, I don't have herpes on my mouth. It's a cold sore. Like, but it is the same thing. Like,
yeah, it's a different strand. So you have genital genital herpes, which is a different strain to the one that you see around your mouth, but it's still a type of STI that you can pass on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so can it go from like here to here then, or vice versa?
Through oral sex?
Yeah.
I mean,
or if you've been kissing and then...
Yeah, so if you've been kissing, you can pass it on. Especially if you have...
Cling film will save you.
Yeah.
Got some in my bag. Always
Go nowhere without it. It was so funny though, like, do you know, like that conversation like a parent might have with their like teenager, like the older teenager child, like providing them with condoms for safe sex if they had a lesbian daughter and they were like, just like, here's some cling film and just get out there and be safe.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
It's not recommended. Shall we have a look at a few other sexual health myths and see what we if Dr. Priya can decode some of them. Pull-out method. This is a very popular method of birth control. So the pull-out method is a reliable form of birth control. Is that true or not?
No, that is not true, because even if you're pulling out, you may still have some pre-ejaculate that gets, in there.
Yeah.
And this can contain sperm, and this can cause a pregnancy.
So many people who use the pull-out method, and I suppose that's just rolling the dice, isn't it? Like, that's probably the least, like, what's the word? Reliable way of birth control, I'd imagine, because there's pre-ejaculate. Like, stuff's getting in there.
Yeah, stuff is getting in there. And also, we can't forget that you're not protected from sexual STIs, you're not protected from STIs if you use a pull-out method.
Yeah.
So we should be using contraception.
Yeah.
Well, no, we should be using, protection.
Condoms or something. Yeah. And you. Oh, here's one too. So you said you can get pregnant at any stage. It says here you can't get pregnant during your period, which I think is what most people assume, that during the days that you bleed, that you can't get pregnant during those days. I think most people avoid sex during those days, maybe just because it doesn't feel as comfortable, but I know lots of people who would still continue to have sex during those days and would probably think that they're protected just by that.
Exactly. I mean, while the likelihood is lower, it's not impossible to get pregnant while you're on your period. And this goes for if it's your first period, if you're not bleeding, you can still get pregnant if you've had a period. Yeah. And usually, I mean, the highest, the stage where you can get pregnant is 12 to 14 days before your period comes. That's like the highest likelihood. But it can happen at any time. Right,
okay. See, we were taught that in school, and then as I got older, I think because obviously the likelihood of getting pregnant throughout the month is dramatically lower. But in my school, I was in a school that was like ran by nuns. It was an all-girls Catholic school, and we were just told, like, from the beginning, if you can see a sperm, you'll get pregnant. Yeah. If you're near one, you'll get pregnant. Like, just don't look at them.
Exactly. I mean, there are a lot of like apps and things, like natural fertility apps, that have now become quite popular, but they aren't 100% reliable. Yeah. And we have to remember that as women. You can't always trust that little window when you can have sex. Because you could still get pregnant. And
even breastfeeding, they say, is like nature's contraceptive, because usually when you're breastfeeding you don't have a period. And that's sort of from what I breastfed both of my children. The first one was for 1.5 years and the second one was for 6 months, and I was always told, like, or even read that, you know, during this time it'll be very difficult for you to get pregnant. It's almost like nature's way of going, okay, you're still caring for this tiny baby, we'll let you not get pregnant until afterwards. However, and you're supposed to not get a period when you're breastfeeding as well, but mine came straight away. Like with my first daughter, I got a period about 3 weeks after I had her, and I breastfed for a full 1.5 years, and you're not supposed to have a menstrual cycle or have a period when you're breastfeeding, but mine came straight away, which made me think, well, I actually could get pregnant this whole time, so that's probably something that's not true either. It's another myth.
Yeah. Well, so as soon as there is something called lactational amenorrhea, which is when you don't have a period for that 6 months after you give birth. But that occurs if you're only breastfeeding. Yeah. So if you're giving your baby anything, you know, any other type of milk, any other foods, then it's not effective. It's only exclusive if you're not having a bleed and if you're just feeding your baby.
So if you're combination feeding, like if you're also giving your baby formula and stuff, then you're...
No,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know so many people that's had a baby, thought they were safe, and then within months they're pregnant again. So they have
I have two nieces that are 11 months apart.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is not a lot of time to get your shit together before you get pregnant again.
Really not.
That is not. I also know someone, I met someone before who had done IVF like myself to have her children, and she got pregnant, but she had twins. And I know, just because I'm a geek about like all the IVF stuff from like studying it so much during that process, she has twins, but they are non-identical. And I know that means that you've put 2 embryos in, because identical twins will come from the same embryo that splits. So I was talking to her and I was like, oh, they're non-identical, so oh god, you're very brave, you put 2 embryos in, because people would normally be like afraid to do that because you could end up with quads.
Yeah.
That's a lot of baby. So she had 2, and she was, no, actually I put 1 embryo in. I went, but they're not identical. And she said, actually, my doctor thinks we put 1 embryo in, and then within the same 24-hour period, I got pregnant naturally as well. So she got pregnant through IVF. No, this is true. And pregnant naturally within the same 24 hours, just by chance. And they're twins, but they're from 2 different, like, instances of getting pregnant. Wow. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
It's true. Don't tell me it's not. Isn't that crazy?
Honestly, I think a specialist would have to answer that question.
Yeah, that's a documentary, isn't it? Yeah. She's been back home. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So I suppose there's so many things that we hear of that you're like, is that true? And then you suppose you like base your sort of own like intimacy or sexual health around it, and you're like, actually that's That's not true at all. You were saying during like all the pageant, your time during the pageants there, MJ, that there was a lot of like body positivity and talk about women's intimate health. And we've spoken a lot in this podcast about how women and men and, you know, a lot of people are afraid, especially women or people who have vaginas, are afraid to use the word vagina.
Yeah.
You know, it's still in this day and age, and there's still this
definitely.
conversation with all these funny wee words. If we speak about it very quietly, or you know, me and my friends would voice note each other about like intimate things, and the first thing is, if you're around your husband, can you leave the room? You know, like they just don't want that sort of thing. Like, how was the openness and the mindset towards, you know, women's bodies and our vaginas, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean,
during that time.
I guess open as you would be with like a close friend, but then I think the best icebreaker ever is like, well, what do you call yours? What do you call yours? And then like the amount of names that people call them rather than say the word vagina. Yeah.
There's a part in that, I don't know if you've ever seen the play The Vagina Monologues.
Yes.
I did it years ago, and there's a monologue in it where it's just a list of like 3 billion names that we call our vaginas, and it's like, it's like, do you know the name for the remote control? Every house has a different name for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like that. There's a million different terms for it, but it's like nobody calls it the remote control, or do you?
No.
No one does.
No,
We do actually.
Oh no.
God, our family's boring.
It's a stick in our house.
A stick?
Yeah, get the telly stick.
So prehistoric. She probably got her trapped in cling film. Yes. But then that's what I mean, like there's so many different words. So did you feel like was there I suppose when you're in a group of women exclusively, I think people are a little bit more likely to talk about the sort of intimate issues as well. Did you feel like that was a great place to do it?
Yeah, really, really good places like your sisterhood or your best mates. Not necessarily even not necessarily like your girlfriend if you're in a same-sex relationship like myself. Like I wouldn't talk about that stuff in front of her, but I would with my mates. Which
is that is very interesting.
It
is interesting because you would assume, so as a straight cis woman, I would assume that I wouldn't talk to my husband about those things because he's a man. But actually what it is, it's because I'm in a sexual relationship with him that I want to keep a bit of mystery. Don't want to poo in front of him. Do you know what I mean? That you're like, well, I'm not going to talk to my girlfriend about that either. So that's very interesting, because I would have thought, because it's another woman, that you would feel more comfortable, but obviously not.
Well, the first time she said the word discharge in front of me, I was going, stop! I'll pick up the phone 2 seconds later, speak to my best mate, and I'll be like, it was
discharge.
Discharge was this today, and she'd be like, it was fine, don't worry about it. So
that's interesting.
But I also have something called what I call like vagina fear, and I believe, I think I can't be the only one that has it. Like most people must have it. So like when you are, I guess, like with a new partner or something like that, and you're worried about them seeing your vagina for the first time.
Yes!
You know, because they all look different. And my girlfriend will probably kill me for saying this, but like hers was just like designer. Like I'll do an impression, but
of her vagina.
So this is what I say to her as well. I'll be like, yours is so perfect. So hers is like this.
Oh my god, that's brilliant.
Mine, I was like,
You're angry.
So I always say mine. This is my vagina. I was so nervous. I was so nervous the first time she's seen it, and I was going, oh my god. Mine's like, and hers is like.
Opposites attract.
But I mean,
if my vagina was a reflection of my personality, it'd be like this. Stop it. Put that down.
But it wasn't till like only a few years ago, and I'm in my early 40s now, that I seen there was a piece of artwork that they moulded like about 100 different women's vaginas.
None of them the same.
And I was like,
I'd like to see that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not as weird as I thought I was.
I've seen that actually. That was
so
incredible.
amazing.
Made me feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So vagina fear. Most women must have vagina fear.
I think you get more vagina fear after you have children as well.
That too. I think that's why mine's now.
Yes. Yours is knackered. Check it. Yours works so hard. It's
I
like,
know. It needs a rest now.
Yeah. Yours needs a wee holiday.
It needs to kind of suck back in.
But that's the thing, like after you have kids too, like you're worried about having sex again because you do feel like, is everything gonna feel completely different now? Is everything gonna feel completely different for my partner now? Is it gonna, do you know what I mean? Like you're like, is the sex that I had before gonna be like, those days are gone and now it's gonna have to be a different type of sex now afterwards? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is you do need to adjust, I suppose. Like things are, your anatomy is different all over, I suppose, after you have children, so it is a period of adjustment. But I think I need to get the mirror out because I must have vagina fear. I don't think I've ever really had a proper good look. Even saying that now makes me feel cringe.
It changes.
Which is so annoying. I wish I wasn't like that. It changes you.
It does change. It does.
Oh, I thought you meant looking at your vagina changes you, but you're saying your vagina changes.
No, definitely, especially after childbirth.
Of course, yeah. Well, I don't really know what it looked like before, so I look at it now and go, whoa.
I remember after I gave birth.
Mine and Emma's need a holiday.
We'll have the mirrors out after this.
Not on camera.
It is good to check your vagina.
Yes.
It's important, any lumps, any sort of discharge that's different.
Yeah.
It's important to have a good look. We're so used to like checking our breasts and checking other parts of our body. We should be checking our vagina too.
I know, I wonder why. It's just like, it is in, I don't know why they've put it in such an awkward place.
I know. You really have to
get to sort of thing, isn't it? Do you mean if it was like on my chin, it'd be so much easier to have a look at it.
The one in the front.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's like tucked away. Why have they hidden it? Okay. Okay, another wee myth. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, the more sexual partners you have, the higher risk you have of contracting an STI. I suppose, that feels like an obvious thing. Like,
yeah,
just
that
that's
would
a
make
numbers
sense
game
to me as well. To think like, it's probability, isn't it?
Yeah. But then obviously it's like with, somebody in their very first time ever having sex can get pregnant. Someone in their very first time ever having sex can contract an STI. And I suppose there's that stigma as well. If like STIs seem to be like something that people would be embarrassed about saying that they have. But then again, you could have had sex once in your life, or could have had sex with one partner and still contract an STI. But then there's that label that you just shag everybody, and that's why you've got an STI. Do you know what I mean? Like there's that sort of stigma around it, which I suppose is very unfair. I suppose as well if you're young, if you're a teenager or early 20s and you get an STI, I think there's an awful lot of presumption about your sexual activity, isn't there?
Absolutely. If it does obviously influence risk, the more partners you do have a higher risk. But that doesn't mean to say that you still, as you said, if you have sex with anyone, you still have a risk of getting an STI.
Yeah.
So doctors sometimes will ask you, have you had a change in partner, or have you had, how many partners have you had in the last year? Because that can indicate, we should probably get you tested, but we should be getting our regular tests for STIs anyway. But yeah.
Even your smear test too, like the amount of people I know that just like don't bother because of the embarrassment again of having your vagina out with a bright light shining up it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a candlelit. A doctor is not doing your smear test by candlelight. You know what I mean? It's not romantic.
Yeah, I know there's a high number of women in the LGBTQ plus community as well will avoid their smear for all sorts of reasons. And I know that a lot of girls in the community don't, or I say girls, anybody I should say with a vagina, like fear their smear because they don't feel comfortable having something inside them.
Yes.
So a lot of people miss their smears regularly.
Yes, because although obviously it obviously feels slightly intrusive for a very short period of time, but it's obviously it's from a medical standpoint, so it's a necessary evil, I suppose, if we all if we don't feel comfortable with it. But it's so quick. It's so quick and it's so short. But that's interesting that obviously you're mostly talking about lesbian women then who would feel, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously speak for myself, but I know just like throughout my friendship groups and people throughout the community and kind of research that's done on LGBTQ plus individuals, there is like a higher risk because we don't get checked as often.
Yeah. Why is that? I mean, you don't get checked as often?
For all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of women or the trans community, for example, I'm not sure why, but
it's just that thing.
Just as a community, we don't necessarily get as tested as much as like heterosexual cis women would. Yeah, it's the same body part.
It's the same body part, yeah. It doesn't matter what it's attached to or whether it's on your chin.
Yeah. And I've like some trans friends that I've gone that I have. Because they are identifying and presenting as male through choice, does not want to have bottom surgery, they would still have a vagina and all of the health issues that come with that, especially a smear. But then to go to a nurse, which is usually female, as presenting as male, to have your smear test, I'm guessing that must be really intimidating for them
and confusing for the trans male to go into that position, I suppose, because they might feel more comfortable with the male, but then as you're saying, they have female reproductive organs still, you know, so it's a confusing space for them to be in, I suppose. And very scary because you feel very vulnerable anyway as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, especially the trans community, to then, I guess, put yourself out there because you are almost not only just going for your smear, that's going to feel alien to you. Yes. Like you're coming out all over again because if you're identifying as male and living as male, you now have to go and do something that reminds you of your past. Yeah. And completely outs you to a stranger. You have to have that conversation then, Yes, I suppose like arriving, even just like the mechanics of that, like arriving to the doctor's surgery, you know, presenting as a male, identifying as a male, but then you're having to explain that you're there for a smear test.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite an unfair space to be in, and I suppose it's still a reflection of how we haven't progressed enough yet to like give space and grace for those areas and for those people, because it's still very black and white. It's far too, like the healthcare system is still very black and white.
Very much so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I do think that there has been a drive to make people feel more comfortable during smear test, and so now they've become sort of, I don't know how you felt during your smear test, but it was the nurse when I went in for mine, super friendly. Yeah. You know, I don't know if people know what actually happens during a smear test if you haven't had one, but it's just a plastic little thing that gets a bit of jelly on top, put up into obviously into the to have a look at the cervix, then a little brush 5 times just to take a little sample. It's not painful at all. It might feel cold, but then, you know, that's it. Gets removed. Yeah. It's very quick. Obviously, you have a light so that the nurse or doctor can see what they're doing. Yeah. But it's not painful, and I think this is another, you know, myth or misconception that
it's going to be sore and it's not.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's very, very quick, and if you tell the health professional that you're a bit worried, you know, they will do all they can to make you feel comfortable, usually.
And that's good to know, because I suppose it's, again, it goes back to that, like, embarrassment about having a vagina and talking about it.
Or vagina fear.
Vagina fear, that's what it is.
Because it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. It's how we're raised as well. It's like immediately when you're young, it's like they're your private parts, they're private, like you keep those away. And do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, I actually watched a thing recently about naturists, about people who live in communities where nobody wears any clothes, and I remember the host raising a question saying, like, but like, what about the children running around here? There's adults that have no clothes on, and the adults were like, but children don't sexualise genitals. No. They're just where they pee and poo from. Like, they're not making these about, you know, they don't see anything but just skin and bodies. Like, children run around free without any clothes on, and they don't feel weird or strange about themselves. But at some point, we instill in them a shame on their genitals, and a shame about their vagina for young girls, about, you know, keep it hidden and put it away and no one can see it and keep it, you know what I mean? And like it's private, and therefore, although that to an element is like for safeguarding, it then becomes a problem when we feel afraid to go for our smears or afraid to talk about a change of colour and discharge, or our periods changing, or a lump or something that we should raise alarm immediately, but then we have this shame. It's been instilled in us since we're 3-year-old girls.
Yeah, not to show anyone.
Not to show anyone, and not, you know, so it's a really hard line to tread, because obviously it's between that you want to like keep your child safe and make them know that, like, you know, somebody shouldn't touch that unless there's consent, and somebody shouldn't be near that unless there's they're like a caregiver cleaning you or something. Then that, and then the other side of that, it's like, but also you need to talk about it and be aware that there's changes within your vagina and your vulva, I suppose, as well. Like I've said a few times on this podcast about how with my daughter, she knows their vulva. There's not funny words for it, because I never want there to be a confusion if she's ever having to raise a point about it to a caregiver or somebody in school or a doctor when she's using strange words, or even the strange words just sort of like make it silly and childish. And do you know what I mean? It's like taken away from what the real meaning behind it is, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I think it's the language that we use is important, and it's when you have young kids, like what age your kids are?
7 and 9 now.
7 and 9.
So yeah, they've been learning about body parts and safeguarding in school.
Yeah.
And when they came home, they couldn't stop talking about their parts. But yeah, it's really interesting to see, because I was worried about what they would take from it, and like my daughter's just like, yeah, vagina's a vagina.
Good.
It's mine, but like it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know where she gets that from.
Yeah.
And then my boy, well, I say he's a typical lad because he's obsessed with his.
It sort of takes up more space than a vagina though, so I feel like the vagina is in the road. I'm just trying to play, and it's like annoying. Do you know what I mean?
So, yeah, it's they are just exploring at that age what the body parts are and what they do and why they do it.
I wonder how our attitudes would be if we all swapped genitals for the day, and you had to like just like get through the day with a penis, and they had to get through the day with a vagina at the end of the day.
There is a movie, isn't there? Where
yes, I wrote
swap.
it. I've started it.
Yeah. What is it? No, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's
Freaky Friday, Lindsay Lohan.
Is it no, but it's
no, I think I know.
It's like the Amanda Seyfried one. Amanda, no, can't remember.
Oh, is it like You the Man or something?
Yeah, she's a man, or like they swap. Yeah,
they swap
she's
bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how insightful that would be if you did at the end of the day.
I'm pretty sure there's a clip of her like putting her hand down her trousers to like, have a feel.
You'd probably be like, listen guys, I understand why you're readjusting yourself all day long, because that must be uncomfortable. It's just like in the road, isn't it?
I don't think we have to feel too
no,
sorry
we don't
for them.
any sympathy for that.
Exactly.
Right, we'll do one more. Here's a good one. Douche cleansing protects against STIs. So I always thought a douche was for your anus, but is a douche for your vagina?
So douche cleansing. So that is just douche is the act of cleaning your vagina with soaps and gels. That's just the term that is used.
See, I thought there was a specific thing.
No,
I did. Is there like an actual thing?
So there is a thing. So there is a thing called like a douche, like a bath douche, which you use to like scrub your body. But I think
not what we call our husbands.
No, no, only sometimes.
They're douche bags.
But douching is just the act of cleaning the vagina with soaps and gels and things. And we shouldn't be doing that because, as we know, the vagina has this beautiful microbiome of, bacteria, fungi, lots of different things, and it's kept
that are supposed to work and sync, and they're not supposed to be interrupted.
Exactly, and
I think Balance Active have a foam wash that can keep their pH levels where they're supposed to be, instead of using the sort of foam gels and or the washes and stuff that would interfere with that. There is a Balance Active one that keeps all good. We should be keeping the pH at the level that the vagina is at.
Yeah, I think it's about 3.8 to 4.5. I think that's the pH range. And this is so important because it's a barrier for infections. And so when we do use these soaps and gels, we can mess up the pH, and this can cause you to get UTIs, and it can cause BV and things like that. And so we shouldn't be cleaning
with all those other
things. We shouldn't be douching.
She's like, oh, I dished before I got here. Should not have dished. To dish and not to dish.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also, if you're in the shower and you're having a good clean, like, have you kind of half douched them?
I would imagine you've half dished.
Yeah.
But I think you're supposed to avoid just directly putting soap. Yeah. Do you know after you have a child too, and they're like, don't use soap down there, like just like wash everywhere else, and you're in the shower, there's water, you're cleaning, it'll be clean, but just let it do its thing.
Yeah, the vagina is self-cleaning.
It's like our second brain.
Yeah.
It'll sort itself out.
So when like, and please say other people do this.
I hope so.
When you get the shower head and like you do under here and you do under there, would that kind of be...
Well, that's just water, so I don't think that's...
Yeah, but obviously there's a bit of a power to it and stuff, isn't there? Or...
well, if you've not got any soaps, or if you're not really changing the pH,
then that's okay.
Then
Okay, we're good.
but if shower head action is okay.
Do you brush your teeth in the shower?
No, I use cling film.
Okay. It's like it feels like you're going one-stop shop in the shower, just getting everything done.
Get it all done.
Your nails
done and dusted.
Yeah, so because one of the myths is that a douche cleanse protects you against STIs, but yours from the standpoint that actually cleansing yourself like that is going to make you more susceptible because you're at a higher risk of infection.
Exactly. And so it's people who have just had a baby and people who have a weakened immune system, they all have higher risk of, getting STIs.
Yeah.
But
so avoid then.
Avoid.
Well, that's good to know. Because I think that is something that, well, what about douching isn't just your vagina, isn't it? It's also your anus. Am I mad? I could be.
I think it's both. I mean you clean it, don't you?
Yeah.
But maybe some people do.
I feel like douching is a big word. It can refer to lots of different things.
You need a whole podcast just for douching.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of things. So there's always this, like, do you know when you see like men when they come out in showers and like gyms and stuff, and they all seem very confident to walk around naked and walk around with their clothes off. They just like, it doesn't seem to be, no one's looking at each other's penises. They're just like getting on with like, there's some guys that are like, we don't do that, but like that's possibly, I think that's the general sort of notion that men are just much more comfortable walking around like locker rooms and shower rooms at gyms with their clothes off. What was the attitude of the women at UK Miss World International towards like their own bodies, and obviously I seen from the photographs that there was such a celebration of different types of body shapes and heights within that pageant, and was there a confidence to was everyone of different shapes and sizes felt very comfortable around each other to get changed and feel positive in that respect?
Yeah, and I guess at the finals, you always forget you're competing because every single woman that stepped foot on that stage has their own story, and they've had their own 12 months worth of work, and like you're literally celebrating every single woman that steps foot on that stage, regardless of like their body size, their background, their height, their sexuality, anything. But that being said, I've got to be honest, even though I'm all about body positivity, I did have my moments when I'm just like, oh my God, like I feel so different to everybody else. And especially when you stood next to like a 6'5" Russian who's like slim and beautiful and that stereotypical like Eastern model European of beauty, and I'm there with, I'm about half the size of her this way and double the size of her this way. So I had my moments, I guess, because I'm only human. However, you do quickly get past that, and everybody is celebrated. And when you're backstage changing, you've literally got minutes between each round. Like you haven't got time to think about what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, who's doing what, because you're just changing so quickly.
And isn't it wild? Like my husband always says to me, like before we're going somewhere, and he always was like, nobody, like it's only you you're only bothered about what you look like when you're going out, when do you ever look around the room at all the other women that are there and pick apart what they're wearing or what they look like? Because I genuinely don't. I'm more concerned about what I look like. And he goes, so what's happening is everyone there is concerned about their own appearance when they're there. Yet you're convinced, even though you aren't concerned about them, that they're concerned about you. And that's what maybe gives you that wee bit of that blip, that'll be a bit of paranoia, you know, that you don't maybe feel as good as the other girls that are there.
I think that's a male thing to actually, I think it's more of a male thing just to like look around the room and like eye up the competition, because I think that's like driven by testosterone. I'm pretty sure there've been like studies on that where it's like, you know, alpha males like coming along. That's very like, you know, chimp as male. Like the sort of thing where like people come into a room, they're like looking at each other, seeing who would win.
It's like packs.
Exactly.
Do you know where they're coming into the pack?
Yeah,
and they're like,
I think that's their chimp brain.
What's that, like animalistic sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Their chimp brain. Still got it. But it's like, this is also probably something that's absolutely ridiculous, but I read, this could be a myth, it probably is, that the reason that men have a higher libido than most women, which is a general statement because not true for everyone, but the reason that men might have a higher libido than women is because they want more of them. It's like from a narcissistic element that they want to procreate more, and like subconsciously, like they want just to release their sperm and have lots of little versions of them, and it's some sort of maybe like building a community or building a village of like. And building an army or something, do you know what I mean? Like just like having more of you, and that could be absolute shite. But that's what I read.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about?
So I know that men have they have a higher sex drive because they've got more testosterone in them, and that can cause increased libido. And so, I mean, that could also, your reason, it could possibly be a reason too.
It could be something that spans back like an age where it's like they need to have more children to like work and I don't know, do the stuff that we don't do now. They're not sit in front of a tablet.
I've also heard as well that lesbians in general, we have higher testosterone levels. Therefore, that's why, you know, lesbians are, you know, sex mad, apparently. You know, we just don't stop. That's all we do. Like,
that is probably the biggest myth.
It's definitely not the case, you know, because we have other things to do throughout the day. And we'll get back to that later. However, but yeah, they say kind of like hormone levels, like we have more testosterone and kind of more kind of male kind of hormones running around our body, and that's what makes us all sex mad.
So
but it's
horny.
really but horny all the time.
So, like that, I'd love to see some the case. I know, I'd love to see some actual like science on that, because that's like the wildest accusations. Is there any other sort of myths or things that people just assume of lesbians that you're like, that's not true as well?
Where do I start? So but yeah, a lot of
I suppose even roles. I think a lot of people assume that in a same-sex relationship that one person needs to take on the role of the opposite sex.
That is one of the most common ones. Is that
who's the guy?
I get asked that all the time. And my girlfriend is quite boyish looking because she's got short hair, so they kind of go, that's obvious. But I've got a lot of friends who are, I guess what we would say in the community is like a femme, so like a feminine looking lesbian. So like femmes could be with femmes could be with butches. Like there's all sorts. But so many people, the first thing they like to say is like, oh well, who's the boy then? Because naturally one of you have to take on that role. It's like actually we both do. So
and I think that is just like a progression thing as well. I think as we advance as a society, hopefully those questions become less and less when we don't assume that there has to be a male role and a female role in a relationship or in two parents either. Like when we realise that that's not necessary and that's not how relationships work. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emma. You've been an absolute ray of sunshine. Emma, where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about everything Emma J?
The easiest place is to go to my Instagram, which is at UK_pageant girl.
Brilliant.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for
cup of tea in the chat, isn't it?
Every time I now go to my kitchen and I'm wrapping a bit of cling film, I'm going to think of you.
What else can I use this for?
I wonder.
And I hope your girlfriend doesn't kill you for telling us all about her designer
I know.
vagina. She'll be delighted.
I know.
That impression. Thank you very much for watching and listening to the V Revolution podcast. We hope you've learnt some important things, the ways how to use cling film, and we'll see you again.